Hi, Stephanie. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Chef Whitney. Thanks for having me.
It's such a treat to connect with you. We chatted very briefly at Expo West this year,
Yes.
and we were able to briefly touch on the fact that we both really appreciate the values of the Weston A. Price Foundation. And I, as a chef, have been purchasing your family farm's milk and eggs for quite a while. And so I wanted to just better educate myself on A2 milk and your practices so I can better share it with my clients, but my friends and my family and my whole community, because we all just want to be better at buying quality food for ourselves and our family, and also just like using our money to support people that are farming the right way.
Well, very good. That's perfect. We're very much aligned.
So, you've been in the dairy industry your whole life. You love cows. They're a part of your family. What is healthy milk and healthy dairy these days? Like, what does that mean to you?
To me, healthy dairy is always whole milk. And in the last 25 years, I certainly have been passionate about organic dairy, knowing what we know about what good food should entail and not entail. Healthy milk is just whole milk. It is a source of protein and healthy fat. Fats got demonized, and went through Weston A. Price Foundation, we definitely learned that fats were the good guys. And I've always known that as a farmer, growing up eating the bacon and the beef and whole milk drinking. And so grass-based organic milk is really important because you get the grass-basedness that the cows eat for the omega-3s, the healthiness of that. And so it's important that that whole milk is organic, or any milk we drink, because the good things are in the fat, and you want that fat to be nourishing for our bodies, our mind, and things like that.
Yeah, I always go back to the Weston A. Price Foundation and what they teach about how to feed kids and how important fat is for brain health and brain development. And the night before a test, you want to eat food with fat. The morning of a test, like you want to have, your oats with a little bit of cream on top. You want to get the healthy fats in for your brain. And I still think we have a long way to go to re-educate people that fat is good, but you just have to choose where you're getting the fat from wisely.
Yes, and we are seeing whole milk sales just increase all over the place, and non-fat milk sales decrease, and also a demand for butter and cream in the marketplace all throughout, whether it's organic or conventional. And that's a great sign. That means consumers are paying attention, at least the next couple generations. The older people, they still want to go to the non-fat because they believe the diet dictocrats. And you mentioned the children. I love Weston A. Price's Nourishing Our Children campaign. Go to their website too, because I get hints and things like that from there too. Such a great resource.
Can we touch on non-fat milk and non-fat dairy products for a sec? And I think one of the things that really stuck with me when I was learning about that in culinary school is that dairy is fat, and there's no way to technically make it non-fat. That's just kind of like a verbal game in the dietary world.
Correct. I certainly don't focus on it. It's doesn't have flavor. The flavor is definitely in the fat. It does have the protein, and people sometimes think they're getting the high protein, and that's great. But then now with people doing that for many years, we have a lot of autoimmune diseases. And so when people went on that non-fat, no fat, no carbs, their body's just searching for a way to digest that protein, utilize it when it goes through your organs, and that's where you get those autoimmune diseases. So to go to the non-fat craze, I think America is waking up that it needs to be real fats and healthy fats.
So help me when I go shopping at the grocery store along with all the listeners. And I'm looking at like your milk on the aisles, and the bottle says A2. Can you explain what A2 means and why it helps us digest the proteins and the milk better?
Yes, so A2 refers to the beta casein in milk. Historically, all mammals are A2. Humans, cats, dogs, breast milk, for example, goats are A2. And so the genetic makeup perfectly is A2, A2. You get one gene from mom and one from dad, or as we look at our cows, you get one from the dam and one from the sire. But there was a mutation that happened, and they think 1,000 years ago or
Okay.
so, where just on the European breeds, where an A1 came in. And that A1 is a link in the amino acid protein chain. That chain is 107 links long, and there's a beta casein morphine 7 that doesn't break apart, so it doesn't digest in your body. So you drink milk, and we notice, and people have told us when they drink our milk that's A2, they don't get the phlegm. So to me, that phlegm is your body just saying, oh, foreign protein, I want to expel it. And then they drink it, and then they have digestive issues. Well, what's happening is that protein isn't breaking apart, and that lactose is fermenting in there. And then they say, oh, I'm lactose intolerant. However, when they drink our milk, they're not. So it really wasn't the lactose, because there's still lactose in our Alexandre Family Farm A2 milk. But we have tested our cows over the years. We learned about this process in 2007 or 8 in reading a book called The Devil's in the Milk. And that devil is that A1. So if it doesn't say A2 dairy, then it's not A2. And you want to make sure where you're getting your A2, they are actually testing, because it's not a breed that designates it for the most part. It could be across all European breeds of dairy.
No way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
assumed it was a breed. I didn't know that it truly goes down to genetics.
Yes, yes. And we've tested a lot of Holsteins, of course, but although we're not Holstein based, we're New Zealand based genetics and Fleck V, which is German based genetics. But we've also tested a lot of Jerseys, and people just assume, oh, I bought a Jersey cow, so I have A2 milk. Did you test it? You want to make sure. We've tested equal amounts of Jerseys and Holsteins when we first started, and they were both A1s and A2s.
Interesting. So you never know what you're going to get. How does one even go about, for people that are listening that are dreaming of just having like a few of their own dairy cows on their dream farm someday, how does one go about buying the right type of dairy cow?
Yeah, you just search, I think. Reach out to like a farmer like us. We definitely sell individual cows to homesteading people to make sure they get an A2 cows. That we aren't in that business, but our daughter has helped a lot of families in that regards. There's just different regions in the country. Look and see where the A2 milk is coming from, and that's a great way to start.
All right. So when we're looking at labels for milk, what are other things that we should be paying attention to?
Oh, 100% grass-fed, grass-based, grass. Cows have always historically eaten grass. That's a live food. And really look at regenerative practices too. Regenerative means that where the soil comes in, and I know we'll talk more about that later, but you want to make sure that grass is super healthy, organic. The grass goodness is the CLAs and the omega-3s. The cows naturally want to graze on grass. And when you have a farmer that's practicing those regenerative practices, they're rotating through and getting always the freshest grass. And that's the most nutrient dense for the cows. And that's what we want to look for.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be most nutrient dense for us.
Exactly. It does pass through.
So if we aren't choosing milk with those labels, what can we maybe assume that those cows are eating?
Lots of grains and lots of hays. I I have a motto with our family farm that we always talk about our good. I don't want to talk about their bad.
I gotcha. No problem. So we can assume that they're probably not drinking grass or eating grass or hay.
Yes, yes. I mean, personally, I worry about herbicides, chemicals, GMOs, all that stuff. I have concern about our whole food system and America's children today.
Me too. I get concerned about that as well. And I know sometimes you have to pick and choose your battles, but I at least, if I'm gonna splurge on dairy these days, I do want to make sure that it either has the A2 label on it or the grass-fed, grass-finished.
Yes, that's the way to go. Definitely whole milk.
So one of the things that you guys have on your packaging is no additives. So it says no emulsifiers, no stabilizers, no carrageenans, no other additives in milk, no hormones, no antibiotics. So again, if a brand isn't notifying us that they are refusing to put those things in, does that often mean that that stuff is there?
That's a good question. You look at these words on some of the dairy products out there. I picked up a non-fat cream, for example. That's an oxymoron, but And the words I didn't understand. So I think everything you just listed, some of that might be some of those emulsifiers and stabilizers and carrageenan, I don't know, or flavor enhancers. And so when you look at the ingredients of dairy, it should be one ingredient, milk. And that's, unless they're adding probiotics and cultures to make the yogurt or the kefir, or you by chance splurge and get a chocolate milk. Our chocolate milk, for example, has no carrageenan, which means you got to really shake it well because that chocolate is floating to the bottom. And so I'm a label reader. We were back east for a conference recently. And before we go to our hotel room, we go get our cream for the coffee and some special treats and stuff. And I looked at some milks because I was searching for a cream, and we didn't go to a store that carried ours at the time. And I was shocked. So of course, I picked the organic one. I'm a fan of Organic Valley or Maple Hill, and get their Organic Valley's cream.
Got it. Well, that's helpful to know, no matter where you are, you just have to keep reading the ingredients, even the dairy farmer does.
Yes. Yes, she does.
I love that. When we met at Expo West, you started talking about butter that you guys are going to start making and selling. Can you tell me? I felt like there was something to that butter that you guys were doing. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so our butter is it's a European butter, so it's super high in fat. And I know when we make our butter out of our whipping cream, it's super dark yellow, like kind of like what you see in Kerrygold, or our local butter that's here is Rumiana Cheese makes a butter with our milk and our neighbors' milks and stuff, and super yellow. So our butter is a European butter. It's 85% fat. We also have salted and unsalted, and it's an 8-ounce brick. It's exclusive at Whole Foods. We did that
Oh, no way.
with Whole Foods. And because we're limited, we're,
Yeah.
just one farm doing this, and we didn't have enough. And the other thing about dairy is that people say, oh, your cream or people's creams are so expensive, because fat is more in demand. And especially when the whole milk and the creams and butters, the dairy industry still has to sell that skim, or they have to make their money off the fat, because they've got to do something and really sell the whole gallon of milk every time. But
Yeah.
the consumer wants that fat. And so we had to be limited on how much butter we release in the marketplace. And Whole Foods have been great partners. They released us nationally, and we really adore how they've treated us. So that's why we did that.
I would love to know, what are the recipes that you're often using at home in the morning or for desserts that are having you use your milk, your cream, your yogurt, the items from your farm?
We're big egg eaters, and I love egg dishes because we also have a organic pastured egg business. I will take whipping cream and mix in, with our yogurt, I make a ranch dressing.
Nice.
And yesterday I had to run to town real quick to the grocery store, and I was hungry and really didn't have anything ready to eat that I wanted to eat. So I grabbed the new sour cream we just launched, and I mixed some of our dressing in it. And I grabbed some Simple Mills, the almond-based crackers, real quick, and grabbed a handful of those, and just big hunks of whipping cream. I mean, not whipping cream, sour cream, and that dressing made an instant dip. And I was eating that while I was driving to town, and trying to get a lot done. We've kind of got a busy week this week. And so that was just one, I just kind of think of things. I love making bulk cooking. I'm a bulk cooker, and especially on a Sunday afternoon, I make a lot of meatloaf and things like that. For desserts, I like making a creme brulee using our own eggs and our cream. And what else? I make ricotta cheese with our milk. Definitely coffee every morning with our cream.
That's pretty impressive. Are there particular, since you care about your health, and so
do.
does obviously your family and your family farm, are there particular cookbooks that you like to lean on?
Well, thank you for asking. I grabbed it in case it came up.
Yeah.
This book, so I learned about Weston A. Price in 2003, and when the hard copy came out, I bought it. And The first 85 pages of Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon is amazing, just wisdom that resonates so much truth that makes perfect sense. And again, it taught me how to cook. And in some sections, I have other recipes plugged in, and it's just all tethered, has a burn mark from a burner where I
I
set it
love
when I was
that.
cooking. So yeah, it's well loved.
I love that because my ultimate goal is to cook my way all the way through the cookbook, just to
Oh, that's a
try
good one.
absolutely every recipe. And I keep trying to set myself up like, this is the month where I'm going to start, and every Sunday I just cook one recipe. So I think I might need to stick to that and, you know, apply it this summer and really start cooking my way through that book. It's a great way just to learn new skills and get yourself
Yes.
out of your comfort zone. But then, of course, if anyone that's listening is familiar with that book, it's also going to force you to try a lot of organ meats and
Mhm.
ingredients you probably aren't familiar with. That'll be great for your body because your
Yes.
body will really appreciate the new nutrients coming in.
Yes, and it really taught me how to make gravy. And then I can just whip up a gravy from, just the remnants of a roast or anything and add our cream to it. I often do that because the gravy is usually rich and flavorful and it needs to be diluted. And I want to dilute it with something rich and nourishing. It taught me, well, and then anytime I have a roast, I'm always saving the drippings, and I have a freezer full of drippings that I add to soup, and people want the recipe to my soup, and I'm like, oh, it was a hodgepodge. Never,
Very neat. That's a
yeah,
great tip. Do you
never waste those nutrients.
Yeah, do you put the drippings like in a little glass jar or in an ice tray? How do you save them?
I put them in a glass jar, and then I label them either for a beef or, yeah, mainly we do a lot of beef stuff here because we have the cows. And so I just label them or add to Mexican because it might be Mexican drippings or
Yeah,
left over from a Mexican food dinner night. And then I just freeze it and never waste nutrients. Add to rice.
yeah,
Um, just it's flavorful.
such a good idea. Do you guys do buttermilk on the farm?
We do not. I certainly something I would like to do, but not yet.
If you ever decide that you like when you're cooking at home and you want to kind of tenderize chicken with an overnight soak of something like a buttermilk, would you ever do cream or whole milk with a little lemon juice, or you usually just go towards the buttermilk?
I generally don't buy buttermilk. I haven't learned to cook with it because it wasn't something I had and it wasn't our own. I tend to mess around with kefir in that respect because I've been making kefir with my own grains, and where it calls for buttermilk, I throw kefir in it. I strain my kefir to and get the whey out and make kefir cheeses and herb like a herb kind of cheese. We now have our own kefir in the marketplace, and it's pretty mellow. And I would be using that in place of buttermilk when a recipe called for it. I
That's a
don't know
great
what a
tip.
chef would say, chef.
Yeah, no, that's really creative. I like that idea. In the past, I've sometimes used whole milk or a mix of whole milk and cream with a little lemon juice.
Mhm.
If I haven't had buttermilk on me. I just play around because I think there's kind of no wrong way.
Mhm.
You'll never know unless you try. So that's why I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I've been trying to mix either our yogurt or kefir into just where ingredients call for something else, just to see if I created something new that I can share with our team or share with our customers.
Do you have any plans to put together your own cookbook?
Oh, yeah, that would be a dream. I think kind of a cookbook combined with just the story of what we've been through, what we believe in, and the walk that the Lord's put us on to get here, kind of thing. It's just all been kind of been trials by fire, but we're just called to be a part of a better food system out there, and everything happens for a reason, people say, and I just think that we were called to go down this path, and part of that story along with cookbook recipes in there.
Did you grow up on your family farm?
I did. I grew up on a dairy farm. My mother was third generation dairy. My father was a dairy farmer in the Netherlands. He came over as a teenager. So I grew up working alongside my mom and dad on the farm. I just always prayed I'd marry a dairy farmer. I love cows. I love milk. My mother was super active in the California Milk Advisory Board, which is the marketing kind of arm for dairy in California, and also got involved in national. So we always paid attention in our family to milk after it left the farm gate and watched the grocery store shelves. And fortunately, my mom taught me to shop the perimeter of the grocery store. And so just growing up in that environment. So when I went to college, I met my husband, who was also from a dairy farm, a grass-based dairy farm in Northern California. And that's why we live where we live now.
That is amazing. You're very lucky that your dreams came true. But what I find really amazing is how early you were called to the dairy business and that your heart was really set on being in it. What advice do you have for people that want to get into the dairy industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. Just, whatever you want to do, follow your passion. We had a young man here that recently that works for PG&E and has been saving money buying land so he can flip it one day and buy a dairy. That's his goal. And he was up here to look for a dairy to buy. And that was really neat that he was that passionate. We met him at a dairy conference, and he came up to visit us, and we are very hopeful for him. He has a lot of ambition and talent and knowledge too.
Was there something that made you guys want to focus on grass fed and finished milk or A2 milk? Was there a tipping point that made you guys really want to focus on the quality that you're producing and sharing with others?
When we read The Devil's in the Milk, it resonated truth. And it was very simple that I knew people who could drink goat milk that couldn't drink cow's milk. And goat milk is A2. So when I read all that, it just made sense. And then you read the science and the backup data. So that was our reason for going A2. We did it as dairy farmers. For the grass-based, my husband's family has been grass-based basically for 5 generations. So where we live right on the ocean, where green grass grows all year round, this area is so conducive to grass-based dairying. Our highest and best use for the land in this region is either beef cattle grazing or dairy cows grazing. So there's a bunch of us dairy cattle people in this region. And then to go to market, though, we had really never intended on starting a brand and having our own market out there. But we just started seeing that it wasn't happening. There needed to be something better. And we were excited and scared, but just went after it with faith that it was the right thing because we knew consumers needed it. We knew people were leaving dairy for various reasons, whether it was environmental, for humane, digestive issues, or just anti-animal. We have reasons to come back to dairy, and we check a lot of boxes the way we dairy here. I could go for a walk and go to the stream where coho salmon flow through on our ranch, or the bald eagle nest, or the frogs that I hear all over in the evenings. And just, we were part of an endangered species comeback. And we're the A2 digestibility, just all these things that consumers are starting to watch.
So that leads me to wanting to learn more about regenerative dairy. What does that mean?
Regenerative is about regenerating soil. That's simple. Do no harm to that soil. And when we first bought our ranch 32 years ago, we befriended an agronomist that was driving through, and he taught us about organic matter. You want to build that organic matter. So we started paying attention and testing our soils for organic matter. 50% of the organic matter is sequestering carbon, and we're sequestering carbon at a high rate. And we do that by doing no harm, but also feeding that biology. And it's all microbes down there, and all fungi and everything. Everything we do to it is to feed it. We put our compost out there, our nutrient water, which is manure lagoon water. In our compost itself, it consists of fish waste from the local fisheries. We get wood shavings for bedding for baby calves in maternity barn. And then our manure we get out of the freestall barns, our barns where the cows are in the wintertime. So we compost that and compost, and it just turns into this golden material that's dark, rich, like just wonderful. And we add that to our lands. And the more grass species we are putting in the fields, the more fungi wake up and the more nutrient density you get in the grass species. So we're doing sap analysis on our grasses and getting feedback. And then we're doing raw milk nutrient dense testing on our farms to get feedback. We're not even going out publicly to say that. We want to learn, we want to grow, we want to do better. It's always about doing better tomorrow. So what can we do today? And that is part of regenerative. And the way we rotate our cows through the grasses. So when you have tall grass, it grows, that root system grows underneath. And when we come through and graze that grass, that root system dies off. And that die off is feeding everything and creating the air pockets for the worms and everybody and the fungi and the microbiology just to grow. So what we're finding is fields that we used to irrigate every 10, 15 days. We're now going, every 30 days. We're now going 11, 10, 15 days. No, I said that backwards again. But anyway, we are using less water.
Yeah.
Water retention rate is high in our soils. It's like chocolate cake, and the sponge just absorbs that water and utilizes it. And then in the wintertime, when everything's wet, our percolation is faster. It's just so interesting the way the soil works perfectly, kind of like the way God made it.
And if someone was visiting your farm and just kind of taking it all in, what's the difference that you see from 35 years ago before you were applying those practices?
You'll see Roosevelt elk on our farm. You'll see the grass is real green and luscious. And then where it's grazed, it's already growing back rapidly. You'll see clusters of cows and then grass not being grazed. So you'll see a time of rest for the field and then a group of cows and time of rest. So we're allowing that rest, which is great for the soil and the grasses, that it doesn't get overgrazed. You'll see trees planted in riparian zones. That's one of my favorite areas to go bike riding, is our riparian zone, and just take a walk.
That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing kind of the details about what it's like to create a healthy dairy farm. I think we're so unattached to that, especially in California. If you've driven through Bakersfield or any farming areas, and you don't see green. You just see cows and dirt. That there's another happier, lush, more beautiful way to do it all.
There certainly is, and we understand consumers vote with their pocketbooks every day, and there's a place for those farms with the more cheaper milk and stuff. But if people want to really get something more, pay more for something better, we're a farm that's doing that better.
Well, can you tell me more about your passion for serving your community?
Oh, thanks for asking. I love our 4-H program. And when our son, who is now 33, was in second grade, we started a little bucket calf program. And now today we have 120 to 190 kids every summer that adopt a calf. And they learn how to halter it and take it for a walk on our farm. We do it all in our yard. We live right across the street from the calves. And it starts next week. And so we're really excited to have the kids around. And then they can come anytime during the day. It's not just our weekly meetings. And it's a 7-week program. We work with the kids for a half hour. So they learn about walking the calf. Then we put the calves away and they learn something different every week about the dairy farm. So it's a glorified dairy farm tour over a 7-week period of time. We work with 4-H youth that are our junior leaders that also show dairy at the county fair. And it's just a real rewarding experience. I think most of the kids in our community have done our little bucket calf program. We've done it now. This will be our 26th year. And it just blesses us so much to see the joy on those kids falling in love with a sweet little dairy calf, because they're such sweet animals. Dairy cows are amazing. They're very kind. They're nurturing. They're curious. And the kids get to love on them. And the parents love it. And we get all kinds of questions, and they're every year it's just as exciting as the last.
That is the sweetest little program I've ever heard of. That is so neat. What
Thank
lucky
you.
kids.
Thank you. I think more dairies should be opening their farm to this opportunity for the youth. It's all about youth in your community.
Yeah, do you have any advice to anyone listening who lives near a farm or dairy farm and they have young kids and they would love to be able to just connect with the people that own the farm, or, maybe see if their kids could help volunteer over the summer. How would you want to be approached by maybe a neighbor who just wants to somehow be a part of what you're doing?
I love that question. And I have not been asked, but it's certainly something we experience. I love the families that come here and show their kids the calves. And it started when their kids were little, and they did that. They came and said that they really wanted their kids to grow up knowing what farming was. And so they befriended us. They talked to us. So then we show them where they can go and pet the calf, make sure they wash their hands when they're done, only pick one calf because you don't want to spread germs, all those little things. So now we have a little self-guided dairy tour for those kind of families that are coming over. Farmers are scared with just things going on in the country where there's people that want to do away with animal agriculture. And so just kindly approach them and let the farmer know your goals and how much you just want your kids to know where real food comes from, where nutritious food comes from. Have an understanding that the farming is a hard situation, and they're going to be cautious. They're going to be leery of strangers and stuff. And unfortunately, rightfully so. We're going to put some trust in that we're doing the right thing by allowing people to visit our farm. So try and establish a relationship with the local farmer and praise them for their hard work, because less than I don't know the numbers or the stats anymore, but less and less farmers every day, and rural America is disappearing because of it. And we want to take care of our local farms. I think there is a resurgence for local farms because people realize that we want a local food system. So
Yeah.
hopefully all your listeners can become friends with those local farmers.
Yeah. Any suggestions for consumers on how they can make better choices when they're at the grocery store for their health, or for maybe just supporting small farms that are doing the right thing?
Just find out what the local food system is, if there's any local farmers still in your area. I would try and look for that, look for the local brands, support them, look for organic any way you can. That's super important. I mean, some of the biggest box stores are selling organic as well. And if that's your choice of shopping there, but that we also want to support the natural grocers, Whole Foods, Sprouts. They are doing an amazing job in finding these farms out there that are doing it right. And that definitely needs to grow.
Are there any other books or organizations that you want to make sure that the listeners are aware of that really helped you and your family kind of evolve your food and health and wellness journey?
I read a lot of things that were tied to the Weston A. Price. Let me see, what else did I read? I'm thinking of it. I put so many things away. I have a bunch of cookbooks. I collect cookbooks, but then I'm kind of mean, and I take a razor blade and take out my favorite recipes and sort them. I'm not using the other recipes. Um, I'm fascinated right now by the carnivore diet. And so I'm reading that right now. Just because I'm hearing so many people that are getting a lot of healing by doing it, and people doing it for years. I'm not saying I'm pro or against it. I'm just reading about it. And I definitely love the Bible. It's not, things aren't coming to the top of my head because I did all my nutritional reading around 2003 to about 2008. And then now
Yeah.
I'm living it.
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of podcasts. I like Hilda Labrador, and I do Peak Human and just different ones out there that I stumble across.
I completely understand. I feel like I've been through the deep research and education, and now it's time just to apply everything that you've learned and just live it day in and day out and see what really is right for you and what works with the environment that you're living in.
Exactly. Yeah, and as far as Weston A. Price, I taught the classes and stuff, and some of it's hard, and sometimes it's the degree of healing you need to do. And if you want to sprout everything or do this, and so but it's neat to learn those traits and why.
Is there anything else that you do, being on a farm? Your day-to-day life is probably a lot more physical and more demanding than maybe other people's, or other times when you're having to go to conferences, it's just more mentally taxing than other times. What do you do to keep kind of balance in your health and wellness, in the right place for you?
Um, I actually am financial controller and CFO. So my life is very stressful as we launch the brand and still trying to survive as dairy farmers. So my balance has to come from the word and doing a Bible study and knowing that the goal is to follow his calling, and that is what we're doing. And see the bigger picture, see it at a higher level. And that gives me motivation to keep going and not get frustrated, not want to snap because I don't like what I do as a job, and we will find somebody to replace me in my role because actually I don't get a lot of physical education or physical work.
Yeah.
um, or don't do that, but it's a lot of mental. And so I would love to be on the outer edge of the business doing more things with probiotics and the next thing we're going to get into. I just love that part of the business, but unfortunately I'm doing the financial stuff.
For now,
Exactly.
you've already put it into words, so you'll be moving into the next phase soon enough.
Exactly. And there's no secret that what I love to do, and I love nourishing. Our team sends people over and you got to eat at Stephanie's Kitchen. And we have a farm table that is 12 feet long, and we love to fill it because life is about the table and those who surround it.
It really is. And so that's why, I like to have these conversations. Is the best way to connect with people, is over food.
Yeah.
And we're living at a time now where we have to be careful about the food that we buy and we prepare. And we really want to not just cook with love, but we need to choose ingredients mindfully so we can nourish the people we love. And so that's what I hope a lot of people get out of these conversations as well is whether you're cooking for yourself or you're entertaining, still choose the same quality of food because it's going to affect how those people feel after they eat the meal. Um, and obviously the flavor, and then it'll just amplify whatever love you're putting into the meal.
Exactly. And use those real foods, those nourishing foods. And I love it when you talk about the love of doing it because it you can taste it.
Absolutely. Well, is there one maybe last health tip that you can leave our listeners with that they can consider adding into their life?
One big deal for me when I learned that sugar-fed cancer, I started thinking of sugar as a poison instead of a treat. And
Mm.
because at the time I was putting sugar in my coffee and we just were having desserts all the time. I just didn't know. All my friends were having desserts and everything. And I just kind of, I started cutting my sugar usage down. I didn't put it in my coffee and then raised our kids with, when I made cookies, less sugar and found recipes that use different types of sugar. Or then now all of our kids basically don't have a sweet tooth. I don't have desires for sweets. I just think it's really important to get away from the sweets, the sugars. And when you're nourishing yourself healthy, you're not really craving that other stuff. You drop the cravings. I'm amazed. I could be really hungry and not craving a thing, just wondering what am I going to do to stop my hunger. Um, and
Yeah.
even now, I kind of haven't had a lot to eat today, busy day, and just a little few pieces of salami that we make our own salamis. We don't make it, a local butcher does, and I was really quick, and a good cup of coffee with cream and going, but I definitely need to nourish myself after this talk. But I'm not craving anything.
Yeah, absolutely. When you add the fat back into your diet and quality salt, it takes
Yes.
away the sugar cravings or overall extreme cravings in general. It
Yes.
is amazing what like a real whole foods balanced diet will do. It will remove you from ever being on a cliff like that.
Correct. Yeah, and the salts too. We use Redmond salt, Himalayan salt is great. Every time, all these little things that you can do. I have this, replace it with this as you use it up. Get the right thing. Yes, you're going to spend a little bit more, but in the end, you will start to feel so much better. And, hurry up and start on that real fat because you're right about you just feel so much better. And I love your advice on before a test, do this. And that's when I started taking cod liver oil, I noticed that stress was almost exhilarating instead of freaking me out. and
Wow.
that kind of stuff. I remember learning about that and really feeling the difference if I didn't have my cod liver oil.
Amazing. I will try that. I've bought this one cod liver butter. It's a mix of butter and cod liver oil.
Interesting.
And I add that sometimes, like after I roast a sweet potato, I'll put a little
Mhm.
bit of that on top, and it has cinnamon and um, some other spices in there. But I haven't just bought the cod liver oil, so it's time. I think
Yeah.
that was a great tip you shared.
Well, and I love that you said sweet potato. One of the recipes I just discovered was sweet potato sliced really thin, adobe chilies mixed
Hmm.
with cream and salt and pepper and layer it and then bake it. Oh, that combo of sweet and spicy. I'll have to share the recipe with you.
That is a great recipe. I love that. What color sweet potato do you use?
The Japanese, it's the orange one.
Okay.
Which one
Not
should I use?
Well, I was wondering that might work really well with the sweet potato that has the white skin and the yellow flesh,
Okay.
but they're a little softer.
Yeah, and I use that one too.
Okay, that
I
would
mix
be
it up. My husband always says, you need to buy this one instead. So,
yeah. No, I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing your knowledge about milk and the insight on your farm. I really appreciate it.
thank you for having me. I love talking all things milk.